All right, so you guys, just a real quick blurb from me about the hows and whys of ESO. So we were given the order to find a platform that worked both for the medical side and the fire side. We put out an RFP earlier this year. RFP, for those of you who don't know, is request for proposal. 3 companies responded. Of those 3 companies, ESO is the only one that does both fire and the only one company that does both fire and medical. So the other companies were similar to what we had now, with one company did fire and one company did medical, and there wasn't a seamless integration. So we picked ESO. A lot of our community partners use that. We were part of a consortium that involved Central Pierce, Gig Harbor Fire, Keypen Fire, and Graham. Last minute, Graham bailed out because they didn't have the bandwidth to put this all together, and because the timeline became so shortened. So we were originally told it would be a 9-month implementation. That's best case scenario through ESO. Because of COVID and a problem with the initial RFP, we ended up getting our go live date August 27th. So instead of 9 months, we've had 90 days to build this. So September, October, November. The first battalion level training was December 3rd. So that's important, because on the board next to this timeline is all the entities we've had to collaborate with. Obviously ESO, but ESO is very large and there's different portions of it, right? Gelato, which is the program that Shelley used for CARES, South Sound 911, Telestaff, EF Recovery, Stryker, which is our monitors. These are all big companies that we've had to collaborate with in a very difficult time to communicate. A lot of the people that we would normally have come here to help us have been sent home, and they're only available by sending them an email. You can't call them. So it's been arduous. So, and because it's been arduous, there are some things that aren't going to be integrated in time. The platform is built. We are going to go live January 1st. We could go live today if we needed to, but the work continues for us. So Ashley and I built this program. We put over 700 hours into it in the last 90 days to give you guys, the end user, the best possible product. So after we built it, we gave it to the super user group, which are these people: Watamura, Hudspeth, Sobel, Stanley, Howell, Fox, and Chief Power. And we said, this is what we think it should look like. What do you guys think it should look like? We gave it to these guys because they're a representation of you guys. So we want to change what this looks like. We want to change that looks like, close these validation rules. Every change that they suggested that we could make, we made. So we think it's a good program. We think you guys will like it. It's very intuitive. Even if you don't like it, you're going to use it anyway come January 1st, right? So today's class is going to be a very brief look at what ESO is. So we'll teach you how to log on. We'll teach you how to get a call, go through the call, send the call off. In order for you guys to be proficient at this, I highly recommend that you guys continue to practice after you leave this class. There's currently a dual feed from CAD, from dispatch. So the exact same call you're getting dispatched now to Zoll is getting dispatched to ESO. So if you would go in there and find a cardiac arrest that you ran earlier, you could pull it up on ESO, do everything you want with it. You cannot screw it up. It will not affect the Zoll side at all. That dual feed is just for you guys to practice, okay? On December 31st, the ESO slate will be wiped clean. And then when we go live, Zoll drops off. One last thing. The super user group is the group that is going to be your first resource. If you have a question, you can't figure something out, you will call the super user group first. The super user group, if they can't figure it out, they'll send it up the chain.
Okay, so I think everybody can agree that EPCR reporting is our least favorite part of the job. With that being said, I just ask that everybody keep their expectations, relative to what we're doing today. So through the RFP process, one of the things we identified that was that ESO sucked the least in comparison to all the other programs that we were kind of looking at going with. So part of the reasons why we changed to programs is that EF Recovery was hosting Zoll's server, and that was going to end sometime next year. So we needed to find something that was going to be able to work going forward. ESO does both the EMS Fire and the patient outcomes tab. So if you get put in a report for doing like a set of vitals or an IV or whatever it is, and then the medic unit transports that patient to the hospital, within a couple hours you'll get it'll pop up on ESO where you'll be able to see what the hospital outcome was, whether that person got admitted, they got discharged, what their lab values were, did they die, whatever it is. So ESO is configurable to make the end user's life a lot easier, and that's something that we all kind of worked on to kind of optimize the platform. You'll see with some things like the CPR tab where you essentially just show up to the call and in order you start CPR, you do manual defibrillation, you start an IV, you push an epi, you shock again maybe, and all that's in order to kind of optimize the reporting portion of the call so you're not sitting there fumbling through 300 interventions trying to find the one that you want. ESO talks to LifePak 15s, so you'll be able to get your 12 leads, your vital signs, and then any events that you put on the monitor they'll go up to the cloud, and then you'll be able to pull that from the cloud to your EPCR program. It's pretty seamless and easy. Gelada is the program that Shelly Roan uses for the CARES reporting. So within just a couple of buttons, you can send her a CARES referral through the Forms tab on the EHR platform. And then also ESO is supported by, or is used by East Pierce, South Pierce, and Ording. And then Graham and West Pierce are going to get on board next year. So almost all of our mutual aid partners around us, with the exception of Tacoma, are going to be able to send us reports and vice versa, instead of having to show up to a call and then start all over again. Some of the pros of the program is that you can be logged in 2 places at once. So the mobile app that's on everybody's tablets, that's what we're going to want you guys to use on most of your EMS calls, especially when you're on scene. And then you can also you can send it to another computer where you can be logged in and then write your narrative from the comfort of your desktop. The transfer process is a little bit different, but we think it's kind of an improvement from what we had before. Essentially, it's almost like ripping off a carbon copy of like a old style patient care report, where you can send off a copy and it doesn't just get lost in outer space. So everybody, I'm sure, has had it either on one or the other where the reports got lost, the medic unit showed up to the hospital, it hasn't come back through on their end yet, and then 4 or 5 hours later, after they've already started a whole nother report, it just shows back up magically. So with the way that we're going to show you later today, that's not going to happen anymore. I mentioned the program is pretty user-friendly. It's also a lot more reliable and easier to learn. It's very much like Apple versus Android kind of a thing. And additionally, the information is sent to the cloud pretty regularly. So if you were to have like an interruption with like your tablet died or something like that, it's every 15 seconds it gets sent up to the cloud. So the most you're going to lose is 15 seconds worth of data rather than the entire EMS report. If you have a GTAC with the barcode scanner, you can just scan the back of somebody's driver's license, and all those fields will automatically populate in the EPCR. We also have a patient lookup for like meds, history, allergies, and all the patient's demographics. Those are set to expire in 90 days. So especially when we first get this started, on a lot of your frequent flyers, we just ask that you be as thorough as possible in getting all that information in. That way when we go back to see them the next week or the next month, it's just as easy as putting in the name and date of birth and doing a patient import for that. The flowchart and the quick treat tabs are customized. Like I mentioned before, like the CPR tab is very much kind of what we do in order. And then a lot of the other tabs we've talked about, Brad will bring this up later. There's a lot of other tabs that have been optimized to fit what we need, so you're not scrolling through trying to find interventions that are the most common that we do. The QA/QI process is also streamlined for the EMS lieutenants and the people that work in the admin building, so they can pull some analytics reports fairly quickly on a whole bunch of data entry stuff, and you don't need to be a rocket scientist to be able to figure that out. It gets me to the cons. The big thing that we've noticed with this program that we really don't like is that the patient vitals, flowchart, and billing tabs are the only ones that move over when you send the report from the engine tablet to the medic unit. So in the case of your signatures, especially like if you had a medic engine response for a diabetic call, The medics threw a line in him, gave him some D50, signed him out AMA, and then you went to send that report to the medic unit for them to write up the narrative. If you hadn't had them sign on the medic unit tablet, that signature is going to be lost. So Brad's going to talk later about some things that we can do to kind of make sure that doesn't happen. But that's like the big gripe that we have with it. The other thing that's mildly inconvenient is that the Fireside the Fireside is a web-based platform where the EHR side, the EPCR portion of it, has a mobile platform. So it's kind of like using an app on your phone, that's optimized to work on that specific your phone or a tablet. Where with the Fireside is meant to be on the desktop. So if you have a mouse and you're clicking through all the buttons, it's a lot easier to get through rather than trying to do it on the mobile platform if you were just to log in underneath on the Fireside. So that's all stuff that Sobel's going to cover here briefly.
All right, so we're going to go over the ESO Fireside to start with. The Fireside and the EMS side are very similar in their functionality. So even if you plan to never do a fire report, there's still information in this PowerPoint on how to work the EMS side of it. So as Hudspeth talked about briefly, there was a mobile app and a web version of this program. The mobile app is on all of your MDCs and all of your desktop computers at the station. You can only access the EMS side in the mobile app. The web version, you can access both the EMS and the Fireside. Fireside's only in the web. And Brad will go over some more of the limitations on the EMS side in which app you're going into. Either way, the login information is the same. It looks a little different when you log in though. For the Fireside, you're going to log in and you're going to see that screen on the right. You're going to see a bunch of icons at the top, and for all your fire incidents, you're going to click the red Fire Incidents button in the middle. You might have less icons on the top depending on your access level, but generally everyone should have EHR outcomes in incidents. When you open that up, you'll see a list of all the calls that are going on or have gone on in the past 30 days that are not complete. In the upper left, you'll see that the selected view is recent draft, and that just means calls that are not completed yet. This makes it pretty easy for the battalion chief. In the morning when they log on, if they see nothing in this screen, that means all the reports are done for their shift, and they don't have to do anything or track anyone down. If you are working on a specific engine company, in order to filter this to just your calls, you would go to the filters button in the upper right. It would pull up this menu, and then you can choose to filter this by a number of options. In this case, we're going to filter it by unit. Select a unit or units, then go back to your home screen, and you'll see just the calls that are filtered under that rig. That column second to the right there should also just have the rigs that filtered for what you've chosen. If you, for some reason, need to see a report that has completed already or a report from a time frame far in the past, you can find that by adjusting the selection view in the upper left. And then there's a couple of options down on the bottom. Generally for your fire reports, you're just going to choose the specific report you want to complete by clicking on it. But for example, if you're in HURL and you don't have a call number, you're not dispatched, you're just going there, you could add an incident, fill out the information, and then later import the CAD info. So we're going to choose a call. It'll take you to this screen. This screen looks pretty similar on the EMS side. The biggest difference is that the color on the top is red for fire and blue for EMS, and then the icons and the fields and things will be different, obviously, because you need different information. At the top of the fire calls, you'll see white icons. White icons indicate that you can access those fields. If it's a black icon like the fire icon there, it means that it won't even let you access that field and waste your time putting in information that's not needed. As you enter in information, certain fields become accessible and you'll be able to get into there. Also, if there's a yellow triangle, that means that there's required information in that tab that you still need to fill out. Once you go in and you're looking at what info you need to fill out for the fire for the fire side only, you'll see a red required box next to the required information for state and federal reporting. This is not mirrored in the EMS side because the creators of this program decided that there's no information on a medical report that should be required on every single call. If it doesn't have the red box, it just means that it's not required for reporting, but Central Pierce can still require other information that needs to be entered to finish your report, and it will not have that box. A couple of different fields that you'll see. The main field you'll see will show a hamburger button on the right side of the field. If you click on that, it'll pull up a menu. In this case, we're filling out the incident type for the call. Generally, a fire call is going to be a 111. So it'll pull up this menu, and there's 9 options. So you would select 1 for fire. It'd take you to a sub-menu, which would show 1-1. You select that, and it'll take you to another sub-menu to get you to your 111. If you remember your general codes, you can also input those directly into the search bar. You can type 111 or 321 for EMS calls into the search bar. It'll pull it up there. Or you can type in, EMS, fire, whatever you need for the specific call, and it'll pull up option or options for you to choose. Another type of field will have some specific buttons for you to select. These you'll generally see in fields that only have a couple of choices or a couple of very common choices. Once you click the button, it'll enter the information that you've selected. If you accidentally hit the wrong button, or there's other options for you to see, you'll look on the right side and see the hamburger button. Select that, it'll pull up the new menu, and you can reselect the appropriate info. Narrative fields are where you just type narratives. Generally, if a narrative field is required, it'll have a character, a number that's required. I think it's around 50. There's no specific spell check button in the narrative fields in this program. It still spell checks for you automatically, just like you're typing in a Word program. As you enter in information, different fields become accessible and required. So in this case, we've turned this fire report into a building fire. Now the fire tab is turned white, showing that we can access it. And there's a yellow triangle showing that there's required information we'll have to fill out to complete this report. Additionally, as you're filling out information in the fields, the structure type is required, but once you enter in what structure type is required, an enclosed building in this case, now they want to know more information about that enclosed building, and those red boxes will show up then. If you're working on a fire report and you have an exposure building that you want to fill out information on, you can do that by selecting the down arrow. Next to the incident number, you can add a fire exposure. This is also mirrored in the EMS side if you want to add additional patients. Same location, it'll just say add patient instead of add fire exposure. If you're going to do this or you need to do this, try to do it after you've entered in as much of the base information as you can. All that will transfer until the point where you add the patient or fire exposure, and then it'll be completely separate reports. The Unit Reports tab, which is the second tab on all of your fire reports, should show all of the rigs that went on that call. The current system that we use automatically imports our telestaff rosters into it. The ESO system, because of our truncated time frame, doesn't do that yet. We're working on it. We're hoping soon, if not first quarter of 2021. But if you are trying to fill one of these out and it's asking you for the rig crew information, you would do that by going to the Unit Reports tab, selecting the appropriate unit and edit. It'll then pull up this unit report section, and you can choose the appropriate personnel. This is also the place if you're IC1 on a house fire and you do some activities, IC2 takes over. You still need a narrative for the things that you've done. You would do your narrative under your rig, and then IC2, who completes the whole report, would fill out their narrative under the main narrative section. The EMS reports that you'll have to complete in the fire side moving forward will have information you have to fill out, including it'll still require a narrative. Because you do a narrative or a full SOAP report in the EMS side, you don't need to complete the full SOAP or EMS report in the fire side, but you still need to satisfy that 50-character minimum on your narrative. ESO suggests clicking the headset button in the upper right. clicking the copy to clipboard button and pasting that information, which is the dispatch information, into your narrative. This will save you from having to type up something that hits that character limit, and it's pretty easy and quick to do. The validation button in the upper right, which again is mirrored in the EMS side, is your close call button rule. If you don't know what you need to finish in this report, you would click that. It looks a little different on the EMS side. On the fire side, it will show a number of how many fields you need to fill out still. On the EMS side, it's just an icon that you would click, but it functions the same way. For this call, we pulled it up. There are 18 issues left. The great part about this program is when you pull that up, for this example, we clicked shift required. It takes you directly to the field that you need to fill out. You select the information, and that closed call rule is done. If all else fails and you don't know what to do on a report, you can simply click through those closed call rules, fill out all the information, and be done with it. When you're done, you should see a nice no issues found and a green check mark. You can lock that incident, and then you're done with that call. When you go back to your home screen, it should be clear. At least that call won't show up anymore because it's been completed, and you're done with that incident. We'll email this PowerPoint out, or maybe Target Solutions. There's a couple of extra videos on YouTube for you if you want some extra training or a refresher. The first one's a quick 12-minute overview of the fireside, which is a pretty good video. And then the second one is a full hour long if you want to watch that to get some more training.
So we're going to log into the ESO Suite EHR app. We're going to go through the mobile section first. This is the section that's going to be on all the tablets in the medic units and engines. What we're going to use for all of our EMS calls when we start off. Every morning when you log in, you'll do your login, and you're going to do update. The update's super important because if, let's say, I run a call yesterday and you guys want that patient information for today, you have to update that for that information to come through the system again. So once your system's updated, you can hit Let's Go. And then again in the morning, you're going to set shift, kind of like what we do now. Put in your providers, put in your medic unit, what's your level of care, your shift. And then we believe device down here is probably going to be your connection to your actual monitor for your rig. We just got that basically up to date on Monday. We're still demoing it and trying to work out all the bugs. That's one of those things that we're going to continue to update and figure out as we go towards the beginning of the year. So you start over here on new record. And then remember that only 3 tabs that we're worried about transfer over. So the patient tab, the vitals tab, and the flowchart tab, when you're on scene, are pretty much the only things that we're worried about collecting, because those are the only things you're going to be able to move over to that report later on. If Ed goes on a call and I end up transporting for him, he has all the stuff filled out because he's a super dialed in lieutenant, right? It doesn't make any difference because none of it transfers. So super important thing to remember, especially signatures. So if you have them sign a refusal, but you go on a patient that needed D50, then you called an AMATM, and then all that sort of stuff. If you get a signature on the engine tablet on that, you can't then transfer that to the medic unit. Now, if you're a medic unit and you start anew and you get just the signature on that, when that officer sends you that information, it'll populate all the other portions that they already collected. You'll already have the signature in your tablet. So we're recommending that everybody on scene, when you show up at scene, both the medic units and the engines bring their tablet to the party. Okay? So we'll start here with patient demographics. You can do driver's license scans. We're about 50-50 with the ones that have the cameras on, with that working really well. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. You can do a patient lookup if you have a name and a date of birth. And let's say you hit one of these and you import the patient information and it doesn't give you the history or meds like you want. You can download another one. We're asking everybody for the first 3 to 6 months to put in as much information as possible, because that's how we're going to build a database that we get to use for our own people, right? To make our job easier. So please put that information in. That'll help us all down the line, because every time you put it back in again and again, it continues to update that all that information. Puts in their address, does all their allergies, their meds, their history. Other than this demographic screen right here, you can probably run 90% of your calls on scene with this red lightning up on top. That's called the lightning tab. If you hit the light, and you guys can feel free to play along as we go here. If you hit the lightning tab up on top, you can hit the vitals, and you can start putting in information. If for some reason somebody updates something on you right then, like, hey, their phone number is such and such, you can scoot back, go up to their phone number, go right back to the vitals on the lightning screen. Once you finish putting in that information, and keep going and entering that information. Once you get as much information as you want in here, you hit add vital, it timestamps it at that point and puts it into your report underneath the vital signs tab over here. You're going to have to go back in here later because it doesn't do GCS, it doesn't do EKG on that lightning tab portion. You'll have to go back in there later. You can just do either quick selects or you can do fill it out by hand, however you want to do it. The pain scale you can go to, and it's all animated. You can see people crying and stuff, whatever. And then the general and the meds and the CPR tabs up on top. That's probably 95% of what we do on calls. Oxygen covers your non-rebreathers, your nasal cannulas, all that sort of stuff. And every time you tap one of these buttons, all it does is timestamps it and puts it in your flowchart. So it's not going to ask you what size IV or any of those other things. It's just going to take it and timestamp it and put it in your flowchart. If you accidentally put something in that you didn't mean to, you just come over here, you delete it, and continue on. The cardiac or the CPR tab is probably one we're talking about later on when we start running codes. That maybe we end up just having one tablet come in, and they just open this screen and they leave it on the screen and they never move it. They can come through and they can timestamp when they started CPR, when they defibbed, when they did oxygen, and it's all pretty much in chronological order for your code. So if you pretty much just go across and pick the ones that are appropriate, you should pretty much be able to go in order. If you tap on them more than once, it's basically timestamps it again like you just did another one. Then you would go back to your flowchart and fill in all the appropriate information later. It's just timestamping and putting those things in the program. And that is all the information that transfers. So now we'll go to incidents. So you've already decided that you're going to take that patient, and either the engine's going to write this thing and we got to finish out this call now, or the medic unit's going to transport and they got to finish out this call, however that works. You're going to hit CAD import at that point. That's going to input your information for your rig and your times into that report. So you're going to come through here. You're going to go through and hit the things that are appropriate. Not everything is a closed call rule. So that's one of the things that we did is we basically said we don't want a ton of closed call rules. We want as few as possible. And then if we have to submit different information to the state for their reporting requirements, we'll add those things back slowly as we go. We were advised by people to turn all of them on and then do that in reverse, and we were like, we don't want to do that. So that's how we're going to do it. If there's something that gets added on later, then it gets added on later. So you'll go through, you'll add your personnel. There's a lead and a driver. I am still not sure if lead is who did the assessment lead, who's writing the report, or if it's necessarily the officer. As you do drop-down boxes, that opens up more drop-down boxes if they're appropriate. So you'll go through and hit all those things like if you're transporting, where you're going to. Your CSN number goes in here. That comes into play when we start talking about outcomes of those patients and being able to look all that stuff up. You can do the request for review there. The patient times, the at-patient time does not populate from anywhere else. No CAD information, no other information populates into that, and it's required. So we're pretty much telling people to fill that in 2 minutes after you get to scene, unless there's extenuating circumstances like I went and tromped through the woods for 3 miles and it took us 45 minutes to get there. Turnaround delays for transports is going to be another one that's required, just because we want to be able to track, hey, if it took you 45 minutes or an hour and a half to get turned around at St. Clair, we want to know why. Mileage, no more having to put it into the MDC. you hit calculate mileage, you have a starting point and a stopping point, and it gives you loaded mileage. Fire incident information down at the bottom of the screen. None of this imports over to the fire side, so we're not going to fill it out on this side because it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't do us any good. Assessments. I've talked to Chief Bouchard about this too, and we can pretty much, there's not really any closed call rules on this. We can use this to our advantage however we feel like. I'm not a giant anatomical person, but this anatomical chart's kind of cool. You can open it up. You can do gunshot to wherever you want. If you have a whole bunch of them on there, whatever. And then when you close this, it'll actually chart it down in your assessment automatically. The other way to quickly put stuff in is the quick axe. And you can input information from there just by tapping those across. If you hit assess, it goes into a more detailed checkbox, kind of like HENT. Gives you more information. PERLA, anybody know what PERLA stands for? Pupils equal, round, reactive, delight, and accommodation. The reason I bring that up is because this is a legal document. If you get called into court, you should probably know what that means. I believe Captain Fox is going to put out a brief, short educational thing on that. So we just don't want you guys hitting something and then not knowing what it means if you end up going to court. Skin, also, it's kind of difficult to actually chart. You can do warm, pink, dry. You can do diaphoretic, but you can't do like warm, pink, diaphoretic because it's not any of the options up there. So you can either write it in down here, or you can put it in your narrative, which is probably where you're going to find it in my reports under my skin assessment. On the narrative, primary impression, I believe, is a closed call rule, as well as these others, including supporting signs and symptoms. It will quick lookup, even if you only have partial of the word, it'll actually pull it up in there. So it gives you lots of options for looking things up. This one's kind of different because you have to have a category. I think like it goes under a respiratory category or something, and then under shortness of breath. We didn't design this. We can't alter this. It's kind of part of how the program works. Chief complaint, also another weird one. We don't have a drop box for chief complaint. It's a free answer. So if you walk up and the patient says, I'm sad, I'm tired, whatever that happens to be, that's their chief complaint. So keep going down. Patient transport, improved, worsened, changed. And then your narrative, 50 words or longer, but we're all doing a SOAP narrative, so it doesn't really make any difference. Your SOAP narrative will be longer than 50 characters. Forms. LAM score is kind of cool. LAM score will actually much easier date input than our current system. It'll score your LAM score for you as you start putting the information in. It gives you a breakdown of how it scores it down at the bottom. The sepsis screening doesn't actually mesh with the Good Sam sepsis screening, so just be aware that they're a little bit different. We may be able to add forms in here later. We just haven't done it. We're trying to get this thing lined up so we can go live day one, and then we're going to continue to work on problems. Mobile integrated healthcare referral. So this is if you have a referral for Shelley, do they require follow-up? If yes, then it drops down all these boxes. You answer those questions, and that basically gathers this chart and all of this patient's other charts and puts them in Shelley's on Shelley's inbox on her desk. Kind of a cool system, but no more going to the info portal or any of that sort of stuff to do the referrals. You can do it all right here in the middle of your call.
How do you get to that again?
Forms, and then mobile integrated healthcare. Billing, there's only one tab that we worry about on billing, and it's only on transport. Hit details, ALS1, ALS2, or BLS. And those are the same as what we have right now for billing codes. And then we move on to signatures. The first two sections on billing authorization are the same as what we currently do. The third one, if you transport and you don't get a signature, is a little bit different. It now requires your signature, and it requires a facility signature when you get there. And then along with that, you always have to do a provider signature on every call that you write, and then a facility signature if you transport. So if you transport and you don't get a signature of the patient, or their family, you have to have them sign twice at the facility. And then the last one is the refusal that we're using. We've kind of meshed this in to make it work for us as best we can. It's not a specific AMA or form. This is the Pierce County competency checklist in your protocol book. Check off all of those if they're appropriate. And then the difference between AMA and ROR is that an ROR is going to be not contacted and AMA is going to be phone contact. It's pretty much going to be the difference. And then as you go down, you can pretty much follow the tabs as it goes. What they can refuse, they can refuse their destination that you recommended or whatever it happens to be. There's actually a tab down at the very bottom too for those people that refuse to sign. You just witness it, sign it, and they don't have to sign if they refused. So, any questions as far as this stuff goes so far? There is. There's going to be less information, and unfortunately, Ed, it's going to be plugging along in it a little bit. Under, I believe under narrative, when you do primary assessment or primary impression, I believe there's a patient assist in there, which will probably require less information. See how it says patient assist there? It'll have less closeout information for that, I believe. To double check your reports, let's hit the lightning. To check your reports, you'll hit the checkbox. That'll go through and give you all your closed call rules. If there's anything that needs changed, you basically just hit it and it goes straight to it. It's pretty quick and works pretty well. If you need to add a second patient or a third patient or a fourth patient, you go up to test patient, hit new patient. You can add as many as you want. If you go on an MVA, sometimes it's super helpful to go driver of the red car, or passenger of the purple car. The ESO person did warn us to be careful because all of this, even if you put it in and then you erase it again, is still discoverable information. Don't put the crazy lady in the purple car, okay? Probably not going to look so good when you go to court and have to explain that. And then transferring patients. So again, you only get those 3 tabs that you transfer that are able to transfer, right? So you go to transfer up there at the arrows that go up and down. You come down here to the transfer agency of Central Pierce or East Pierce or wherever you're transferring to, and then you can transfer that. Now what this does is basically think of it like a carbon copy. Like right now, what you have that you have written down on your report, you just tore off a copy and you're sending over, and they need that number to open it, okay? So why that's important is that a couple things. One, if you change more information or you find more information or you get more stuff, you can add that stuff in later. You can just contact whoever you transferred that to and transfer again. You can transfer over and over and over, and that information will just keep updating. If you have information, like if I have a name, first name and a last name in, and you give me a different first name and last name, it's going to overwrite that first name and last name. So, but any boxes that are empty, it'll just fill those in and it won't change anything else in your report. So he does that, transfers 2872. The other person starts a new report, hits receive, types in 2872, and then all of that information transfers to the other report, okay? The other nice thing about that system, let's say that I grab a patient, super sick patient, throw in the back of my rig, I start rolling down the road. I open a new patient, I start putting in treatments and vitals. Officers on scene, and they start getting demographic information for me. Before I get to the hospital, they can send that information. They can text me with whatever that transfer number is, and I can collect all that information as I'm going to the hospital. So I don't have to wait around, and they don't have to try to call me and have me put it in while they're doing it. All that information can go whenever I have time to do it. So this is the mobile platform. This other one is the web platform. On the web platform, when you sign into it, you have fire incidents, medical outcomes, all those things. So he signs into this. The agency code is CPFR. When you log in, you'll see all of ours have some extra ones. Yours will say EHR outcomes and incidents. If you want to check out outcomes on patients that you've been involved with, we believe that as long as you have a connection to that patient, like if your name was in one of the boxes somewhere for BVM or any of those things, it'll actually populate for you guys, we think. But you can go into outcomes for the patient and see what was done at the hospital, all their observation reports, all the nursing notes, all their labs, all that kind of stuff's in there. So the other thing with this side of the program, the log, like where you can just get into any web page and put in esosuite.net and log into this, is that if you start a medical report on that, you cannot transfer that, you can't move that, you're kind of locked into, it has to be done on the web. So go ahead and hit EHR. It looks really similar to the other program. This works out great for, let's say Coco wants to start his report, do all the stuff, wants to come back and write his narrative back at the station. He can sync go back to ESO Suite. He can go to over here, he can sync his records. He can now go back to the station, log in on the internet, and access those records. And those will come straight across. All the information moves over when those come over. One last thing, hold on that EHR before we get there. When you get done with a report, so go to new record, or any of the unlocked records, fine. And you hit this checkbox, and it gives you all that stuff. When it finally is gone and empty, and you've done all these things, it'll say your report is complete. Would you like to lock this report? You answer yes, and then you go out of this, and then go to sync it, and then you sync that up, and that moves it over to the website. And I believe at that point it is done on our end as far as that report's done. If you don't get it done and then you sync it over to the web, you'll be able to access it back at the station. You can pull them up, and everything works pretty similar. Some of the things that don't work is you don't have the lookup, and you don't have the ability to scan driver's license, but you're sitting at the fire station. That's probably not an issue. So that's pretty similar to what we were using before. We are really, really encouraging people to do like one call a day, like run a call, get back, do an ESO. Once you've done your one for the day, then move on. For us to demo 200 calls, we would have to do a ton of calls between 3 of us. For you guys to demo 200 calls, it would be 1 call per person that basically runs calls in the department. So it would be super helpful. And then any information that you guys get, good things, bad things, things that need to be changed, things you don't understand, reach out to the super user group, let us know, and we can try to either explain that or figure out what's wrong with it or make changes to it.